Hello, fifth graders. I'm Judge Sweeney. Each year I look forward to coming to your classroom and speaking to you about being a judge. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, I'm unable to visit you in person, so I've prepared a video presentation instead. First thing I'd like to explain is how our court system works. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history of the Pennsylvania judicial system and our courts. Before we were a republic of states, Pennsylvania, as a colony, passed the Judiciary Act of 1722. This act established the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the Courts of Common Pleas in several counties, which were then the colony of Pennsylvania. In 1776, the year of independence for our colonies, Pennsylvania wrote its first constitution and established a statewide framework for the development of our judicial system. Our Commonwealth's Constitution was rewritten in 1790. Now let's just fast forward to 1968, when our judicial system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was reorganized. You each should have been given a handout that looks like this. It's in the shape of a pyramid. This represents the current Pennsylvania judicial system, or our court system. Let's review the tiers. At the top of the pyramid is the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It's the highest court in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have 7 Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices. At the next level are 2 appellate courts, the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court. The level below that are the Courts of Common Pleas. There are approximately 451 judges that sit on the Courts of Common Pleas throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And then we have the minor courts at the base of the pyramid. We are the foundation of the system of justice and building blocks for everything else. We hold it all up. The minor courts are also called the magisterial district courts. And currently we have 568 district judges in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I am one of those judges. Something I'd like you to remember is that every criminal case gets its start in one way or another at a district court. Next, I'd like to talk about York County's magisterial district courts, and specifically my court, District Court 19304. You also should have a handout, which is a map of York County. My court, as I said, is number 19304. There are 19 magisterial districts in York County. My court is located near the southern branch of the YMCA and the post office, and is close to Market Square in Shrewsbury, although our actual mailing address is New Freedom. My magisterial district, or that means the geography of the territory that is under my jurisdiction, consists of 6 boroughs: Jacobus, Loganville, Shrewsbury, New Freedom, Glen Rock, and Railroad, and 2 townships which surround those boroughs, the township of Shrewsbury and the township of Springfield. I also have jurisdiction over part of Interstate 83, southbound from Route 30 in the York area, south to the Maryland-Pennsylvania line, and also what is known as the Business Loop, which is the section of Interstate 83 around George Street. If you're going to York Hospital, you would be getting off at the Business Loop North exit. The third handout you should have is a brochure about going to a magisterial district court and the types of cases a judge like me presides over. That is not an all-inclusive list, but it gives you a general idea of the types of proceedings that I handle. I don't have time in this video presentation to explain to you all the different types of cases a district judge like me handles. But 2 things I do think are important for you to know. Often a district court and a district court judge is the first court and judge, and indeed sometimes the only court and judge an individual will ever encounter during their lifetime. Also, there is a district court on duty in York County 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This means all the time, to handle anything that may need to be taken care of that is sensitive or of an emergency nature. Some examples of that would be if a law enforcement officer needs a search warrant, an arrest warrant, preliminary arraignments where people are held in custody against their will, and they have a constitutional right to see a judge and have bail set without unnecessary delay. Another very important role that district judges provide is we are on call to handle emergency protection from abuse petitions. I want to give you a fun homework assignment. On the handout from my district court website, you'll see www.districtcourt19304.com. That's the website for my court. Click on that website link at the Links tab, and then select the Dangerous Dog Registry. One of the cases I handle, one of the types of cases that I handle, deals with a dog that may have bitten another dog or bitten a human. And I have to determine if that dog should be declared dangerous and the owner fined, and then additional other things may occur that have to be put in place to make sure everyone is protected from that dog. So if you click on the Links tab for the Dangerous Dog Registry, open that link and scroll down to York County. We're at the very bottom of the list because it's in alphabetical order. And open that tab, and now you can search by address and see locations in our magisterial district court in your community where there has been a court determination that a dangerous dog lives at that location.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm the clerk who processes landlord-tenant complaints and the civil complaints.
Hello, my name's Darla. I'm the office manager at this district court. That means that I manage the daily routine of the office to make sure everything's running smoothly. I'm also the criminal clerk, meaning I process our criminal cases.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I handle the non-traffic citations at the court.
Thought you might enjoy seeing some video from my office. This is also what is known as a judge's chambers, and this is where I do most of my work when I'm not in the courtroom presiding over cases or handling other proceedings. One thing that I've done is have a calendar with inspirations every day, and I review my calendar entry, and I just want to share one of those with you. You might notice I have a number of them posted on my door into the courtroom so I can look at them. One of them I thought you might enjoy is minds are like parachutes. They only function when open. This is the lobby of the court building, and I'd like to show you the door where you would enter the courtroom for your case. I have instructions posted for all case participants so that they understand some of the rules that they have to follow when in the courtroom. I have 2 conference rooms in my court building where attorneys can have conferences with their clients. Law enforcement officers, and I believe you saw a state trooper in my lobby earlier, they can meet with their victims for their cases or their witnesses. Okay, we're here at District Court 19304, and our purpose today is because we have preliminary hearings scheduled in criminal cases. And I'd like you to meet 2 of the attorneys who I see regularly in my office for serious criminal offenses, which would be felonies and misdemeanor crimes. And each of the attorneys is going to introduce themselves to you and explain their role in the criminal justice system.
Hello, my name is Katie Himes. I'm an attorney with the York County Public Defender's Office. My official title is Assistant Public Defender. So you're probably asking, what is a public defender? When someone is charged with a crime, they need an attorney to help them. Some people don't have enough money to hire an attorney, so that's why we have public defenders. A public defender is basically a free attorney in criminal cases. You've probably learned about the Constitution in school. People charged with a crime have constitutional rights, and my job is to protect those rights and to make sure that nothing unfair happens to them. My job sometimes involves taking a case to trial where a judge or a jury decides whether my client is guilty or not guilty. Other times, my job involves explaining why my client broke the law and did what they did. For example, my client may have a drug problem. If one of our clients has a problem, our job is to try to get them the help that they need. On a few occasions, an individual may be charged with a crime that they actually did not commit. And in those cases, our job is to make sure that they're not punished for something that they did not do. On a daily basis, I work with clients, district attorneys, judges, and police officers. My office is in the courthouse. I hope that you all do well in school and stay out of trouble so that you never need a public defender, but if you do, we would be there for you. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Tobias. I am an attorney with the York County District Attorney's Office. My official title is Assistant District Attorney. My role as a prosecutor is basically representing all of you in the Commonwealth. What we do is we make sure that people who are committing crimes are held accountable for their actions. We are involved in summary offenses, misdemeanor offenses, and felony offenses. What that means are people who are committing crimes such as driving under the influence, retail thefts, drugs, and even murders, we get involved. I don't know if you've ever watched TV and saw CSI or Law and Order. We wish it would be that easy to prove people guilty. However, it takes a lot of time and effort and working with police departments and defense attorneys to make sure the right outcome is had. First of all, everyone is presumed innocent, and it is my job as a prosecutor to prove otherwise. That can be a jury trial where 12 members of the community will decide the guilt or innocence of the person who is accused of committing that crime, otherwise known as the defendant. A judge can also determine that, whether it's a judge trial or at a guilty plea. As a prosecutor, we work closely with police, the defense attorneys, and victims to help determine the proper resolution to cases. Sometimes people might have a mental health issue or a drug and alcohol issue. We try to make sure that they get the help that they need so they don't commit more crimes in the future. As a prosecutor, we do work closely with police departments, victims, and make sure that they are in agreement with the resolution, and our outcome is hopefully always in the best interest of the community.
Frequently, the court has individuals who have been transported here who are in custody, either in the custody of a law enforcement officer or a Pennsylvania constable. Sometimes these individuals are transported from prison for a court trial or some other proceeding, and sometimes they are brought in because of an outstanding arrest warrant, because it is alleged that they either did something that they should not have done, or because they didn't do something they should have done, like pay their fines and costs. So now I want to show you the portion of my court building where I have my holding cell for people in custody who have been transported here to see a judge or for a court proceeding. Well, hello, Constable Chandler.
Well, hello, Judge.
I see you have someone in custody.
Yes, ma'am. I brought him up from the York County Prison for you so you could speak with him today.
Constable, could you explain to the fifth graders in the Southern York County School District what you do as a constable in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Sure. Well, today I'm doing a prisoner transport for a hearing. I pick the gentleman up at the county prison. He attends the hearing, and then I return him back to the prison. My normal duties consist of warrant service, evictions, service of subpoenas, and any other day-to-day activities that the court needs me to perform.
Do you sometimes bring individuals in court who have an outstanding arrest warrant for criminal charges?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And how about warrants that are issued for people who don't pay their fines and costs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Constable
Sure,
Chandler.
yes, ma'am. All rise.
Good afternoon. You may be seated. Thank you. So we are here this afternoon for a preliminary arraignment for this gentleman. Normally, kids, I would read the caption of the case, but I want you to understand that the gentleman who's agreed to be our prisoner in custody is not really a prisoner in custody. He does not reside at the York County Prison. He is a very gracious community volunteer who agreed to play the role of our accused defendant today. So I want you to understand he's not actually in physical custody. So this gentleman is here today for a preliminary arraignment. He's facing some serious criminal charges. So I want to explain to this individual that I'm going to be conducting his preliminary arraignment, and I'm going to explain the charges he is facing. I'm going to advise him of some of his rights, and one very important right is the right to have an attorney. And then I am going to advise him what will occur next on his criminal case, which will be a preliminary hearing, and I'm going to explain to him what a preliminary hearing is. And then the last thing I do when I do a preliminary arraignment is I have to conduct a bail hearing and set bail for this individual, and that would be the terms and conditions that I deem are appropriate for the protection of society, to ensure he will appear for his next court proceeding as required, and for his own protection if that may be necessary. So I may be imposing terms and conditions for his release. One of the additional things I want to explain is you might have noticed that when I walked into the courtroom, Constable Chandler said, "All rise." And everybody stood up in the courtroom, and I thanked them, and everyone was seated. The reason that you stand when a judge walks in a courtroom is you're not standing for the judge herself or himself. You are standing out of respect for what that judge represents, and that would be the rule of law.
All rise.
Good morning. You may be seated. Thank you. We're here for a summary trial in a traffic matter, Commonwealth versus Timothy David Jones. My docket is TR 1475 of 2020. This relates to an offense charged under the Motor Vehicle Code, Title 75, Section 3327A, duty of a driver in an emergency response area. Anything to discuss before we get started, Trooper? No, all right, let me just briefly explain to Mr. Jones how a summary trial process works. The Commonwealth who filed your citation goes first. They have the burden of proof. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. Any witness that testifies on behalf of the Commonwealth is subject to questioning or cross-examination by you. That's not your opportunity to testify, Mr. Jones. That's your opportunity to ask the trooper questions. Once the Commonwealth completes the presentation of its evidence, I invite you to present your defense. I'll swear you in at that time if you choose to testify. You have the right to testify. You have the right not to testify. That's your choice. Once I've heard the evidence, I'll make a decision and we'll take it from there. Any questions, Mr. Jones, on the process? No. All right, Trooper, your first witness will be yourself? Yes, Your Honor. All right, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give the court in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, Your Honor.
Be seated, state your full name, and identify your employer, please.
Your Honor, I'm Trooper Franklin Abreu. I'm employed by the Pennsylvania State Police, currently stationed out of the Troop J York Barracks.
Okay, you may proceed, Trooper.
Your Honor, on Saturday, July 12th, 2020, I was on Interstate 83 southbound in the area of Glen Rock, exit 8, on a traffic stop. While on that traffic stop, I noticed that there was a vehicle traveling in the right-hand lane of travel at approximately 55 miles per hour. I did have my cruiser lights illuminated while I was on this traffic stop, and I was operating a marked vehicle. I concluded this traffic stop after observing that the vehicle in the right lane failed to slow down and or react to my emergency lights, as they did not, again, slow down and or attempt to avoid my traffic stop location. I located that vehicle and initiated a traffic stop just prior to exit 8. Upon approaching the vehicle from its passenger side, I identified myself and the reason for the stop. The operator, Mr. Jones, was made aware that the reason he was stopped is because he failed to slow down and move over to avoid my traffic stop location. Mr. Jones was asked to provide his license, registration, and proof of insurance. On doing so, I returned to my vehicle, queried the information provided, and ultimately issued Mr. Jones a traffic citation under section 3327 of the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code Type 75 for the duty of a driver in an emergency response area. Mr. Jones is seated to my left with the blue button-up shirt, Your Honor. He was identified through his Pennsylvania driver's license number 28136-427. This citation was filed within this magisterial district court due to the fact that, Your Honor, the traffic stop location is within this court's jurisdiction. Nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Jones, do you have any questions for the trooper?
No, I do not.
All right, I just have one question, Trooper. You indicated, I believe, if I recall your testimony, that Mr. Jones was traveling at approximately 55 miles per hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What is the posted speed limit in that area?
It's 55, Your Honor, but due to the fact that it's at the time I was on a traffic stop prior to initiating the traffic stop with Mr. Jones, he had the duty to either slow down to a reasonable speed and or if the left lane was available, merge into that left lane as to not create a safety issue for me and or the other motorists.
Okay, thank you, Trooper. Mr. Jones, as a result of my question to the Trooper and his response, did that prompt you to want to ask him any questions?
No, I just want to understand that he had his lights on and I did not respond according to the law.
All right, thank you. Does the Commonwealth rest?
All right, Your Honor.
Mr. Jones, would you like to testify?
Yes, I would.
Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give the court in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name, please.
Timothy D. Jones.
All right, you may proceed.
Trooper, I did observe the lights and the activity on the right side of the road. I apologize for not knowing that that was a requirement in the state of Pennsylvania to pull over to the left lane if it allowed me to do so. I apologize for that, and I realize I probably put the trooper at risk to a degree. I also just would question the fine itself as to its rate for this first offense, and that's really all I have.
Any questions on cross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Jones, I just have one question for you, and it deals with the speed issue. The trooper testified that the speed limit in that area was posted at 55 miles per hour and that he estimated your speed at approximately 55 miles per hour. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree.
All right, thank you. Trooper, as a result of my additional question of Mr. Jones, does that prompt you to want to ask him any questions?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Jones, as a result of my question to you, does that prompt you to want to offer any additional testimony?
No, not at this time.
All right, thank you. So before I provide my disposition in this case, I do want to ask Trooper Abreu if there were any individuals on that traffic stop when Mr. Jones passed you that were out of vehicles, either yourself or whoever you may have pulled over at that time.
At that point, it would have just been myself, Your Honor.
All right. And were you out of the vehicle?
I was, Your Honor.
Okay. And the other question that I'd like to ask then, does the Commonwealth have an input on the issue of a fine?
No, Your Honor. I would leave that matter up to the court.
All right, and I asked that because Mr. Jones questioned the amount of the fine. So, Mr. Jones, what I like to do with this particular statute is first explain to you that this is a safety statute, and the law is when approaching or passing an emergency response area, a person, unless otherwise directed by an emergency service responder shall, and the word shall in the statute means must, shall pass in a lane not adjacent to that of the emergency response area if possible, or if passing in a non-adjacent lane is impossible, illegal, or unsafe, pass the emergency response area at a careful and prudent reduced speed, reasonable for safely passing the emergency response area. The idea behind this statute, as I said before, is safety. It is very dangerous to those of us who find ourselves on the side of the road, particularly on an interstate when speeds are 55 or 65 miles per hour, not to be concerned about our safety. So it is a safety statute. An emergency response area, Mr. Jones, is not only a law enforcement officer such as Trooper Abreu here, who has someone pulled over on the side of the road or had just made a traffic stop. It could be an ambulance on the side of the road. It could be a tow truck. Indeed, you could be along the side of the road changing a tire, and arguably that would constitute an emergency response area as well. So the testimony is that you failed to move to the left lane and you failed to reduce your vehicle from the posted lawful speed limit of 55 miles an hour. So the Commonwealth has met its burden of proof here, and I find you guilty of this particular citation. The maximum fine for this particular offense, if found guilty, is $250 unless you're in a construction zone that's active. Then the maximum fine is $500. So you would note on your citation that I indicated the fine to be $250. That allows me, Mr. Jones, when I hear testimony in a courtroom, to reduce a fine if I believe the facts warranted. The court wants to acknowledge that you were extremely truthful and forthcoming here in the court today by indicating that you don't disagree with what occurred, you acknowledge what occurred, and I believe if I understood your testimony, you also acknowledged that this may have constituted a danger to the trooper along the side of the road. This law is also called the steer clear or move over law, which means move over if you can, and if you can't, slow down. So now what is a reasonable, safe, and prudent speed? I believe that the legislature intentionally left that amount of the information out of the statute and did not put in a specific speed limit one should slow to, because they felt it would be better for the judge who heard the evidence to make that decision on a case-by-case basis. So I believe you should have slowed your vehicle in the right lane if you felt you could not have gotten over to the left lane. I do recognize, though, again, your honesty here and the fact that you were very forthcoming with the court. So I am going to reduce your fine to $150 from $250. Now there are costs that are noted on your citation, so the entire fine and costs are due in one of two ways: 30 days from today's date, and if that's not doable for you, you can set up a time payment plan and you can make monthly payments. There's no cost to do that, and there's no minimum other than I try to have you make a payment plan of at least $25 a month, unless that's a financial hardship, and then I'll work with you on a payment plan. The reason your first payment would not be due if you set up a monthly payment within it would be more than 30 days from today's date, or the reason you have 30 days to pay in full is because you do have the right of appeal of 30 days from today's date if you disagree with my disposition. And before you leave today, we'll give you an appeal paper so that you would have those instructions. So I would like to thank both the Commonwealth and Trooper Abreu and Mr. Jones for your professionalism today in this proceeding. Thank you. So I would also like to thank Trooper Abreu and Mr. Jones, who participated in this abbreviated or mini summary traffic trial as community volunteers. Trooper Abreu is the community service officer for the Pennsylvania State Police serving in this area, and Mr. Jones is a local resident and did this as a community volunteer. Trooper Abreu did not stop and cite Mr. Jones for this traffic citation. This was a fiction created for the benefit of the fifth graders at the Southern School District, so you would have a flavor for what a summary traffic trial consists of. Thank you. So as you can see, there are many people and many professions who work to make our court system work. I want to thank all of the individuals who so graciously donated their time to this community service project so that the 5th graders in the Southern York County School District would get a chance to see some of the people who play very important roles in our criminal justice system and in our court judicial system. All of these individuals were volunteers and graciously provided their time to this very worthwhile project. I'm also very hopeful that in 2021, I will be able to visit the 6th grade classrooms and meet each of you personally and answer any questions that you have, since I wasn't able to come in person this year. The last thing I'd like to talk about briefly are law-related professions. Obviously, you met a judge, you met an assistant district attorney, you met a public defender, you met a constable, and you met my court staff, who, without their help, I couldn't do my job. There are many, many other professions, including law enforcement officers, and of course, you met a Pennsylvania State Trooper. I want you to think about some of the other law-related professions. There are game wardens who enforce our hunting laws and our fishing laws. There are dog officers. There are park police. There are private attorneys as well as the public defender that you met. And I want to give you some more unusual professions. A Central Intelligence Officer who deals with national security interests and intelligence. A computer forensics investigator. A correctional officer, someone who works at one of our prisons. How about an air marshal, usually undercover, but placed on airliners to ensure the safety of the flying public? What about a blood splatter analysis individual, someone who looks at blood patterns at a crime scene and can determine whether that was an offensive or a defensive wound that caused that blood splatter? There are many, many other ones, and I'm sure you're familiar with all the television programs that talk about the crime scene investigators and the labs who do the forensic analysis. There are many, many careers in the criminal justice system, and I would like all of you to think about the possibility of exploring those careers as you get older.